This podcast is brought to you by Fireside.fm. Podcast hosting by podcasters for podcasters. Now on to the episode.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I do feel like we need a new intro at some point, but beyond that.
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's too natural.
Maybe someday we'll have a game where it's like, okay, which episode is this? And all you get to hear is the, hey, how's it going part.
There we go. We'll have an AI-generated game for us.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother topic for another day, just AI generation of games. But I think there was something else that we were thinking about talking about, though, to kind of get back on target.
Yeah, probably more important. And, I think a lot of it from my perspective, and I think you've been feeling a little bit too, is just, we've kind of known it's coming because AI has been cheap and everybody's always like, oh, it's getting cheaper and cheaper. And, people that really look behind the scenes are seeing it's cheap because AI companies are trying to get you hooked on their product so they can then jack the prices up because you can't spend billions to trillions of dollars on infrastructure and then, charge $20 a month or whatever and expect unlimited usage. And so, this week we're starting to see some of that come due just in, there's Claude Code might be coming out of the pro account at this point. And so that's definitely something where people that are on $20 a month accounts are going to be feeling some pain pretty quickly. I've seen that like Codex is not planning on doing that, but at the same time, OpenAI does not have the best track record of telling you the whole truth. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. It feels like let Anthropic go first and then see how it goes and then, change their model at that point. And, between that,
they're also playing from behind a little bit too, right?
For sure.
It's like they're playing catch up now. So
yeah,
they're a little more willing to let it go longer probably.
For sure. And I think at this point, they might have more infrastructure than Anthropic does. But at the same time, I just saw that Anthropic signed a deal with Amazon. And I think they're putting 20 billion, 50 billion in infrastructure with them. It's like one of those circular deals where Amazon is investing in them, but they're also putting a bunch of that money back into infrastructure. So
sure.
Yeah, it's hard to see where it'll go, but I definitely have been expecting the AI is going to get more expensive. You're not going to be able to, and it was actually called out pretty interestingly from the Claude Code team, talking about the fact that when they created Claude Code and when they created actually the plans themselves, they didn't plan on Claude Code. They didn't plan on co-work. They didn't plan on agents, like all of this stuff that they've created, but the plans were really for chat, just straight up chatting without all of this ongoing long-running usage. So it's definitely it makes sense. You kind of knew it, but it's also a pain because you got to pay for so many services these days because you can't just run one thing and do it successfully. And you also want to keep up with it. And so it's kind of like, how can you get around it a bit? What are the alternatives these days? I mean, what have you been seeing on your end?
Yeah, I mean, you shared an article and we'll link to it in the show notes and stuff that kind of kicked this off, but also even before this happened, you and I are working together. We're working together in parallel, I guess, to build a couple products that we'll talk about probably later if they come to fruition. But, the point being though, that we're both trying to get stuff done. We're trying to use these tools. We both are on the cheaper plans right now, at least for personal use. So, we're trying to maximize essentially what you were just talking about. They're potentially going to take away. And, I had seen even before the last week when I'll just say you and I were both using the Get Shit Done GSD plugin or library. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. But it's my take really quick just on that is it's similar to a Ralph loop or anything that's going to basically try and do the work without you doing a lot, but also it's going to burn a lot more tokens that way.
Yeah.
And, I hadn't been using any of those things before this week. And on the $20 a month plan, doing the little bit here and there, I never really hit my max. I would never hit 100% usage.
Yep.
And then I used that on a couple nights ago for the first time. And just in the planning stage, which is pretty thorough, and I think it's pretty awesome because of it.
Yep.
I hit within, I think, 30 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
Just with the planning stage, I hit my 100% limit for the 5-hour mark. And I haven't burned through like my entire week's worth yet, but I could definitely see where you would. So yeah, I mean, it definitely, there's a lot of things there, I guess. It's like trying to get a big project put together like this on the cheaper plan. I knew it was probably going to be a problem anyways, but it's like this realization now that yes, it is. You're not going to get very far. And because it's part-time, it's okay right now.
Yeah.
But if this was my, day-to-day thing, like that would be a non-starter there. So, but yeah, I think you've got almost in some ways a little more interesting setup that you've been running though, because I'm only doing Claude Code. And you still use Windsurf. So maybe talk a little bit about what you've been seeing.
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny because I'm essentially paying, I think, $60. No, maybe it's $50 a month right now. So like half of a Claude Max plan at this point.
Yep.
And I've actually found an interesting kind of setup of, I have Windsurf, I've got Claude Code, and then I also have Codex that I run too. And I found it's been interesting because recently Windsurf, they've got all sorts of models that you can choose from, just like Cursor does. But they have Kimi K 2.5 and 2.6, which 2.6 just came out. And they actually are free right now. And based off of the benchmarks, 2.6 is supposedly rivaling Opus. I don't know if it's actually 4.7 or 4.6. But it's been interesting because what I found, and just kind of to back up a little bit, with the Get Shit Done, I started using it a little while back because it's really interesting how, it goes through and it does, you discuss your features, like, you essentially like create the roadmap, then you discuss each phase, you plan each phase, and then you execute it and verify it. And so, and the cool thing is it like produces artifacts for each of those pieces. So you have, all of that memory baked in. And so I've had a lot of success kind of missing all of the, it built it, but it didn't hook it up correctly and all that type of stuff, because it has that context that it can keep going back to, and it kind of keeps you on target. Like for me, I tend to side quest, as we laugh about all the time. I do it when I'm, using, coding agents where it's just like, oh, but what if I add this feature? And oh, what if I add this feature? And which, is cool and it's powerful, but it's also that like, you're making progress, but you're not actually making progress to your like overall goal. Like you're doing little things here and there, but it's better if you like add it to the backlog, which you can do and Get Shit Done. And so kind of going back around what we were talking about, I found an interesting kind of mix where you can use either Codex, on, for 5.4 on medium or high reasoning, or you can use Claude, whether it's Opus or Sonnet on high, to do a lot of like the planning and stuff like that. And even some like the more complex features, like let it kind of churn on that. But and I wouldn't even say all the planning, like for the research stage, I actually let Kimi do that instead because it's free. So I'm running, you can do all the tokens at once. It can run through it. And I haven't hit any limits yet there. So to save some of like the bigger horsepower, so to speak, I kind of let the other models do some of the more intricate stuff, but then let theoretically a comparable, but the open source model that runs for free, do a lot of that like churning type work. And I found a lot of success in it where it's like, I will hit my limits still on Claude Code pretty frequently. And even on Codex, after they changed their, like it was up until April, they were like, you get 2x usage just all the time. That dropped off. So like I'm hitting my limits both in Codex and Claude Code pretty frequently. Like it's usually like 2 hours before my window's even up, I'll hit it. But before, you'd have to stop. You'd just be like, okay, I can't do anything until I've got my usage back. Or obviously you can upgrade and pay more, but it just doesn't make sense in this context. And so having that other tool that has a free model, and I mean, the nice thing is Windsurf also does have, Opus, Sonnet, any of the GPT models. So if I have a bigger problem that I need to do in that window, I can still just use their usage as well, which is pretty reasonable. So, but I've found it also interesting because they're all different in what they're good at. Like it's kind of I have seen Kimi do some actually pretty cool things and it actually does a pretty good job. But I've noticed with the new model because its focus is actually on agent work. It's supposedly
Okay.
I think you could run like 100 or 400 agents with it. Like
Hmm.
that's what it's kind of designed for. I actually noticed it sitting there like chatting to itself constantly, and it like almost gets stuck in loops because it just sits there and like thinks about it, and it's constantly like, oh wait, but what about this? And like then 2 minutes later it's like going back in the direction it came from. And so it's also interesting to see how models are expanding their reasoning, which is actually what I've heard about Opus 4.7 too, is like people are burning tokens faster in that because its reasoning produces so much more that your token usage is gone through the roof because of that versus the actual output. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of these like dynamics that are changing. And I think it's interesting. And like Windsurf's not the only way to do it. Like you can actually, hook up it's a GLM from ZAI has a plan where you can actually hook that into Claude Code, and there's a couple
Okay.
others like that where you can run, like you can actually even run like Gemma 4 on your Claude Code, but it's super slow. I tried it one day and it took like 10 minutes to actually produce anything, and if you didn't have the token or the context window high enough, it just wouldn't even do it. So where I'm getting at there is that there's a lot of like the open source and alternatives that I think are going to start being more and more useful as the big players are not able to actually keep up at a lower price, to do their models. And honestly, like I'd be interested in your take too. I mean, are you feeling like Claude Code is still as good as it used to be?
That's a good question. I guess it wasn't really until 4.6 came out, a couple months ago, or maybe even 4.5, I guess, in
Sure.
December, when I really started pushing it more to its limits, I guess.
Sure.
I have been using it for a long time, obviously, and we've talked about that a bunch, but
Yeah.
I guess I struggle a little bit because like it's definitely way better than it was a year ago, right?
Sure.
Like
For sure.
that's not even comparable. But for what I've been using it primarily, it is more things like just helping me out, like the command center idea that
Yeah.
I've talked about over and over, and I'm still using. And actually, like I keep pushing that even more.
Sure.
And that's even I've got that like coding things for me now, like not directly, but long story short, like that to me, that output probably is fine, whether it's Opus 4.7 or
Sure.
even Sonnet or anything else. So that one's a little bit harder to gauge.
Yeah.
And when I do write the code with it, I'm not looking at it close enough to really say like it's not doing a good job. It's getting the things
Yeah.
done that I want it to. So I probably haven't seen as much as maybe you have.
Yeah. And it is funny though, too, because I mean, that's kind of a good point is that a lot of times there's the expectation of like, oh, I need to use Opus 4.7 or Sonnet 4. Like it really comes down to gauging what you're actually doing and being more
Yep.
thoughtful about what is this? Like, is this a complicated task? Is this novel? Or is this something that's like a quick bug fix or like a simple feature that probably is very well represented in the training data? Like,
Right.
depending
Yep.
on the complexity, you can scale back on the model and still get good enough results. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's kind of a, you know, because we don't have to write the code anymore, there's more and more kind of thought that can go in. I mean, if you have unlimited funds, of course, you can just run Opus 4.7 all the time and pay for the, even the API, and who cares?
Yeah.
But if you have a budget, if you're trying to do this, in a reasonable price, it's like just putting a little bit more thought and care into what models you use, especially as agent harnesses have become kind of the harness is almost more important than the model. And
Right.
I've seen a lot of that too. And so like Codex is getting better. Claude Code, like that's where I'm a little iffy. Like comparing Codex to Claude Code to even Windsurf's Cascade and all that, like it feels to me like Claude Code has actually gotten worse on the harness side of things. It just feels like
Okay.
things have gotten a little weirder from that perspective, just in my personal experience. Like maybe other people aren't experiencing that, but I'm not as I'm not feeling that Claude Code's quite as far ahead as it used to be, which has been
Okay.
interesting to see. But it also is like I'm starting to see past just the Claude Code. Like there's that, model plus harness mixture. That's just interesting to see. Plus, like, what are you actually doing with it? Because it varies so much based off of how complex of a problem you're actually trying to solve.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, I do have access to Codex now, so I think I wouldn't mind testing it a little bit. Like I have done a few things where like I will run a review, a pull request review or whatever, and then sometimes I'll do it against a couple ways. Like one is I will actually run both of them in parallel just to see
Sure.
like do they find the same things or not.
Yep.
So far, like honestly, they're pretty similar. Like
Sure.
I have never seen anything drastic where one or the other finds something the other one didn't that was like
Yeah.
mind blowing, right?
Yep.
But then there's also times where I'll be like, okay, this was written with Claude, so I'm going to use Codex to review it, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yep.
But I haven't really pushed Codex all that hard on the actual coding stuff. Like I've really just stuck with Claude Code,
Sure.
partially out of being lazy, I guess, because I've got it set up, and while it's not that hard to really get Codex in the mix, it's just like it's enough of a barrier, which is also, I guess, something. It's kind of like that stickiness, right? That people talk about with products all the time. It's like,
Yep.
by Anthropic building all the tools, and even if Codex or ChatGPT, I can't even say their name right, OpenAI is catching up, it's like, well, but Anthropic does have that built-in base now of people already using their products, and the switching cost is getting higher now, where it's not just switching the chat interface, you're switching all the harnesses and all the scheduled jobs and all those things, so not exactly sure where I'm going with that, but it's I guess just another layer of it all. So,
I mean, it's a good point, and it's actually something that I've noticed myself, just with the rise of AI in general. It's like, and I see it too with how people use it. Like even people that are not technical like us, it's like they find something, and at first it was ChatGPT. Everybody used ChatGPT, and like at work, everybody used ChatGPT for up until the end of the year, essentially.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, as everybody kind of realized that, oh, Claude's out there and it's actually good, then all of a sudden everybody mass migrated over to Claude. But I don't see a lot of that like curiosity of like, hey, I'm going to poke around. Like me personally, I've used Claude as my daily driver for probably 2 years now, like from pretty early on. But I still use ChatGPT for some things. I actually use Gemini quite a bit too to do stuff at work because we've got it through our Google Workspace account. So
same here.
So I try to push on all of them to see like what is good at what. And some of it too is like, because I don't want to invest $100, $200 a month in one of the tools, it also then puts it like a artificial constraint essentially of how can I achieve what I want to without investing all of my money in one place, and then I can kind of see like, if I use Codex, Windsurf, Claude Code all together, like what does that look like? Does that work great? Maybe it doesn't sometimes, and maybe it would be easier in one place, but I do like like what you were just talking about, the build it in one, review it in the other. It does. I mean, no, they're not radically different in terms of their output, but I do find sometimes like one's a little bit more diligent about like how it reviews or how it tests or things like that. And I honestly, another thing that just popped into my head with that is the other thing I'm finding that's really starting to be kind of a game changer more than the models or even the harnesses are skills. And like, I think, have we talked about superpowers before at all?
I don't think we have on here.
Yeah.
But
like
I know what it is.
Yeah, we don't go too deep into it, but like superpowers has a ton of different skills, and one of them's like test-driven development. One of them's like systematic debugging and stuff like that. And having those skills is actually making a bigger difference than anything because it's actually using frameworks and different repeatable patterns for all of my projects. Like I install it for everything, and so it then picks up those skills that actually works in Codex, it works in Claude Code, it works in Windsurf, all the same thing. So it's not like you have different skills in each. It's you can share them across, and that kind of lowers the barrier of like, okay, I'm going to go from Claude Code to Codex. And so
it's a good point. Yeah,
interesting to see that change. And obviously skills are popular, so it's not like this is a secret, but knowing that you can use it across platforms actually changes how you interact with them a little bit.
Right. And that's a good point, because I also noticed that with the get shit done thing, plug in whatever skill, like it, you could pick your model right there too. So it's the same kind of idea, which is a really good point. And I definitely would agree. Like, it feels like the power, well, yes, these models are going to have to get smarter to, if they want to replace all of us or whatever. But even if let's just say they never even get past where they are today, there's so much you can already do. But like leveraging the skills, to your point, you can get so much more out of it. And I think that's just something, maybe this is a good place to start wrapping up, is like, if you're someone that is conscientious, you don't want to spend the max plan or whatever, or maybe eventually these those max plans might get to be
they're going to get more expensive,
burning out of their tokens too, right? And so like, I think there is definitely something here that you want to start thinking a little more about, not just throwing things at these AIs, but also just like, how do you leverage them? How do you use the right, like you were talking about earlier, like using the different models. And even like I've seen Conductor, which is a harness that I use. I've seen that one switch to like Haiku for writing the Git commit, because like, why use Opus 4.7? Although it's that side note quick, that's funny, because then it's like, it tells you that Haiku wrote it, like the whole commit. And I'm just like, whoa, that's no.
Haiku's just taking credit for the whole thing.
Pretty much. It's like, okay, step over 4.7. I took care of this.
It's like, I haven't been updated in 2 model versions, so I better take some credit for some stuff.
Right. Like, I know how to code. But yeah, I mean, that's just like, it's a really good point. There's like the skills and leveraging them, and especially like putting the right skills together, I guess, is another thing too. There's things that, and this doesn't have to be things that are coming out of superpowers or any skill tool. Like, you can make your own. Like, that's something that I'm going to start doing a lot, even for our show here, just like building skills that are like a pipeline, essentially, to like do the automations that I'm already doing manually anyways. But if I can just leverage a skill, which is just an automation, right? Like, that's something that I've been doing since the dawn of me programming, was automating things that I didn't want to do anymore. This is just another version of that, really. So
and we can actually post it if people haven't come across it too. There's skills.sh is a Vercel page where they have all the things that you can just download and install really easily. So it's an easy way to see a lot of what's out there. But to your point, building skills is literally just a markdown file. Like, it's just creating a markdown file. And, most of the models now have a skill to create skills. So you don't even need to do it by hand. You can just talk to the AI and it'll do it for you. So, it's definitely something to look into.
Yep. All right, cool. Should we wrap it up there?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. And, feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're listening in the audio version, feel free to rate us on Apple Podcasts. I know we have a lot of listeners there. So again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.